Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hello and welcome to this episode of our program. This is Mike Saunders with Marketing Huddle, and today we have with us Clyde P. Riddlesbrood, who is with Riddlesbrood Theater Company. Clyde, welcome to the program.
Hello. Thanks for having me on today.
Hey, so give us a little bit of background about yourself and what you do for a living with the theater company.
Sure, certainly. Well, we are a touring theater company, so unlike, say, a theater that works in just one building all the time, we tour all over New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, even farther on some occasions. And we do many different shows, repertory shows for a lot of private parties, theaters, fundraisers, company parties, pretty much any event where people are looking for something to entertain and inspire their crowd. That's exactly what we do. So we travel around and peddle our entertainment about the land, as they say.
Yeah. So that's similar to someone being a keynote speaker who goes and speaks at corporate events. It's just that you bring a whole troupe with you, and it's kind of a lot of moving pieces and moving parts, I would suspect.
Oh, certainly. Like a lot of theater, we have different packages. So sometimes we do a very small show with just 2 people. And more often we have a slightly larger show with 4 people. And sometimes we do a very large show with 65 people in the cast. So depending on the size and scale of the event, we have something accordingly. So sometimes we can bring a lot of lighting equipment and everything for a big casino gig or a corporate event. But sometimes we even do small private parties in people's houses for like 12 people, which is also a lot of fun.
Yeah. So what typically are people having you come out to do the shows for? Do you do mostly corporate events, or is it mostly personal events?
Honestly, it's all across the board. I would say most of the shows that we do tend to be for some kind of private party. Like a company party is pretty common. So in December, sometimes even in early January, we do a lot of company holiday parties. That's a very popular time of year for what we do. But we also get hired a lot of times by restaurants, like historic restaurants or inns that like to have some kind of fun entertainment show, a dinner theater show, where they can invite their patrons to. So quite a few local restaurants hire us every year to do a Halloween show, a Jersey Devil Halloween show, or a Frankenstein. So that's another pretty popular time. We also do a lot of senior bus groups, which are like matinee day shows. We do them at several different locations in North, Central, and South Jersey. And also we do a lot of kids parties and sometimes schools. So honestly, it runs the gamut all over the place. We'll take the money no matter who it is.
Yep. Well, it's really interesting how, all of that sounds really unique, which it is, but there's so many similarities between what you do and what what people would think a traditional small business needs to do. Because, for instance, a small business has to market and an entrepreneur has to get out there and sell. Well, so do you. So how do you find the process of being an entrepreneur in the entertainment industry working? Because just because you've done a show or two or have some experience, people are not beating their way to your doorsteps and coming to you, hiring you. You have to stay visible. You have to market. So how does that look like for you?
Well, you're exactly right. I like to think of myself really more as an entrepreneur and a salesperson than I really do as a theater person, because the reality is 98% of the things that I do and the time that I spend is almost always on promotion or sales or, running the day-to-day activities of a small business. So really that takes up most of the time. But it also speaks to something a little bit more. Like with our theater company, we tend to be very positive and very energetic and very outgoing. And that kind of seeps into our sales as well. So we try to be a little bit theatrical in our sales. We try to use the same techniques that you would use to inspire, say, an audience, to inspire a would-be client, or a Chamber of Commerce meeting that they ask you to speak for, or anything like that. So we do take a lot of tricks from the stage and apply them to our sales and promotional efforts.
And what would give us an example of what that might look like, being theatrical in your selling? Because I would suspect that a business, an entrepreneur, could really use some of those ideas in their marketing, because it would help them stand out all the more better, because nothing more boring than doing the traditional whatever, handing out flyers or doing emails. So how can people spice that up using some theatrical techniques?
Well, I mean, that's extremely important. The first thing I would say is be exuberant and be passionate about what you do. I mean, that comes through with almost everything that you're doing, whether it be your business card or a phone call. That passion really needs to be there. And that's often, I get asked that question a lot where, hey, I have a little band I'm starting off, and, how do I get shows? Who do I find as an agent? People, especially in the arts, are always looking for someone else to be their agent or their salesperson. And that's one of the first things that people have to learn, and sometimes they don't like that, which is, listen, this is your craft. This is what you're passionate about. No one is going to sell it like you, And that's why really artists, entrepreneurs especially, but really any entrepreneur, no matter what you're doing, you have to be excited. And I often tell people, listen, if you're really excited about what you're thinking about doing, your idea, don't you like to tell your mom, and don't you like to tell your brothers and your friends? And eventually they're like, will you shut up and stop talking about what you're doing? Well, use that same excitement and desire to talk about what you're interested in, and just talk to your customers with that. And that enthusiasm and energy will be detected, and it'll transfer. They'll get excited too, because they'll say, wow, this guy's really excited about this thing. Maybe it's something that I should be excited about too.
Yeah, that's huge. Enthusiasm, passion. It makes you stand out, because I think that a lot of people just tend to state the facts and hope that people really get it. And I think that you also have to make sure you're talking to the right audience, because, if you guys are talking to the wrong people, or even the wrong decision maker, no matter how enthusiastic you are, that person might not be the one that can make the decision or hire you. So I think that all of those traditional sales and marketing things have to come into place. And, like they say, facts tell and stories sell.
Right.
So what is your experience with some storytelling that would help get your message out there a little bit better? And then how can small business owners and entrepreneurs use that?
Well, certainly. Well, as far as storytelling, I'm a big believer in that. And one of the big reasons is to differentiate yourself from your competitors. Now, one of the things that we've done is we've created Clyde P. Riddlesbrood as an entire personality. He's our mascot. We have a whole book that we've written about the legend of Clyde P. Riddlesbrood and how he came to be. And it's really a cool, fascinating, kind of novel. So we actually went so far as to write an entire fantasy novel about the company. And the idea that, even if this company didn't exist, if somebody found this book and this story, they would just love reading it because it was so cool. Well, we wanted to do that. We wanted to make, knowing about our company like knowing about Harry Potter, or, knowing about anything that's like a really cool story, We would like you to read about it just because you're interested in it as a story. So if you can come up with something about your business, something about your mission, something about your company's origin, or anything like that, if you can come up with a really compelling story, that's going to make your job a lot easier, because you can just talk about the story. You don't have to talk about, our price points are, 1% cheaper than, that kind of stuff. People just want to beat themselves in the face. But a story, they'll love it. They'll want to sit there and talk about it. But, other theatrical 101 things that are always very helpful are sometimes simple, like presence and volume. Like I notice a lot of people that are entrepreneurs, they could really use a lesson in acting 101, because, if people perceive most of what you're communicating verbal, with what your face is looking like and how you're present. So if you don't look very confident and you look quiet and you sound like meek and mild and, you're a little not sure what you're doing, people are just going to assume that your business is equally unstable. So you really should learn presence. If you're standing in front of an audience of 100 people and you can command them well, then just think how much better it'll be to just talk to one person. You'll have a lot of confidence. So also vocal energy, the volume, the pitch, the way you can control your voice, these are all extremely important modes of communication. You could have the best material and lines in the world, but if you say them in a clumsy, quiet, unrhythmic way, it'll weaken your position. So I would encourage anybody who's going to be a salesperson to do a little theatrical training. It'll help you immensely.
Yeah, and it may even just be fun in that learning process, in the sense that what you were making the point about the storytelling. So there's some of my favorite books, business books, are fictional stories that make a business point. Who Moved My Cheese and things like that, where, it's fun to read, it's a quick read, but the main point was these one or two or three main business precepts, and you end up, I can't tell you how many times I've used the example of the book called Whale Done, talking about how to motivate people with positive reinforcement, not negative, and that just sticks in your mind because you read a neat story about how they train Shamu at SeaWorld, and I think that too many times people just think of their business as the facts. Here's our bullet points, here's our trifold brochure, and call me, and what about that is going to make you actually take action?
I'm just writing down that Whale Done book. I've never heard of it. That sounds really cool. I think I want to see it.
It really is, yeah. Just Google that, and you'll probably read it in 2 hours. But it's a super book, and many others just like that. One of the books I wrote, the first book I wrote, was a fictional story based on how you can use social media in business, but it was written in a fictional story format. And I think that so many times people just need that simplicity. You don't need a 400-page book to keep, reiterating all these points over and over. Just get in, get out, and make the point.
Well, honestly, if you want to go back to the days of mythology, a lot of ancient storytelling, usually there was some moral or there was some message they were trying to convey, but they would do it using the mode of a myth and a story. Same thing with business. I mean, one of my favorite ones is Og Mandano. You ever hear of the Greatest Salesman in the World book?
Oh, yeah.
That's a great book. I love that one. I've read that a couple times. But, that's a great story. Now, obviously it has a little bit more of a religious aspect to it. But the fact of the matter is that, you don't have to. But if you take the precepts of habit, forming strong habits in your day-to-day activities, as opposed to just operating, when you have the passion, you do it, and when you're bored and, kind of sitting on your butt, you're not doing it. That's where, I'm a big proponent in habits and forming strong daily habits.
Yeah, we could go on for hours on that one point alone, and that's super important. And you have to know the right things to do, and then just do them consistently. And then all of a sudden, after a period of time, a few months of doing these good things, you kind of look up out of that, consistency and go, hey, this is starting to pay off finally. And then also you'll find that something comes across your path from out of left field that you really didn't plan for. But what's happened is you're so much in action that things are just happening, and you might not have planned for that, but something you did here triggered something there, which then made this result, and it never would have happened if you had just been sitting around, thinking positive thoughts. You gotta get out and do it.
That's really important. If you're out there every day, making calls and meeting people and getting involved in things, you just never know who that person is. And their brother might own a restaurant. In our case, we just started doing a really good real world example of that is we just started doing these promotional events at car shows and things like that, like big car shows and food shows at different towns and things. And we had not really done that very habitually. Every once in a while we'd do one, but we didn't really have it figured out. Well, we recently decided, let's put a little show together, a 15-minute short show that's really funny and really action-oriented, and we'll go to these shows and we'll sell our book, and we'll talk about our shows, and we'll talk about our brand. Well, just from doing that, we've only done that 3 or 4 times, and even though we haven't gotten a lot of people booking shows, a lot of the other vendors that have been there were so interested in it. We were getting leads from the other vendors and finding out about other opportunities, and we've since actually been booked by other event coordinators that actually plan these shows and those were paid gigs. So I would never have gotten those had I not just said, you know what, let's try to get involved and, mix it up a little bit. So you never know what's behind that door.
Yeah, you bring up an interesting point, too, from the aspect of strategic alliances. So you were going to those shows thinking that the attendees might be interested, but in reality, here's this vendor who they spent money on their booth. They're spending money on the time to get in front of the attendees. Why would they do that? They want to do it to get more business for themselves. So could your troupe, could your show help that vendor bring in more business for them? So if you can approach them and say, you know what, do you guys have a strategic alliance, an engineering firm or whatever that vendor does, where we could come in and we could put this event on and call it a strategic alliance appreciation event for all of your, referral sources. And now all of a sudden, here's this vendor that you met at one of these shows, and they're looking at you going, you guys could help us get more business because, A, showing appreciation to clients and their vendors, their strategic alliances and referral sources would be massive. And if I were you, I'd keep going to those shows only to meet the vendors.
Well, exactly, but it was completely unexpected. We thought, well, we're going to hand out our flyers, and all the people are going to say, oh, they do a show, But you're right. The benefit came out of a direction that we had no idea. Yeah. So it just goes to show you that just being active, being out there, putting your thoughts out there, putting your intentions out there, sometimes will make Providence work in your behalf.
Exactly. Hey, I'm sure you've got some funny, fun, crazy, interesting stories that you can recount. Can you think of one real quick that we can close with, and then we'll
like a sales-related kind of thing, or just anything?
Anything funny, but yeah, if it's got a sales twist, that would be fun too.
Well, one funny story that I like to mention is, we also do a lot of murder mystery shows. That's actually probably about 80% of what we do. And not too long ago, a couple of years ago, I had a client, and she called us up. It was a restaurant. I won't say names, but she wanted to hire murder mysteries for her event that was coming up at the time. So, I talked to her, and she really got to like me. Now, our price was a little higher than I think some of the other competitors. So at a certain point in the process, she had us pencil her in and stuff like that. But then I kind of got the impression like she never sent the contract back. So I kind of thought the deal was done. She didn't. She went with somebody else. But I had still reached out and called her and just said, hey, I just wanted to touch base and see, how it's going. If you're so interested, we're real excited. Well, she kept calling me and talking to me. Well, long story short, eventually, I talked to her so much that my assumption was that she had booked it with us. But I had made kind of a clerical mistake, and even though she never signed the contract, we had talked on so many occasions and such particulars that we both assumed that she had booked it with me. Come to find out the day of the event, 2 murder mystery companies show up.
Oh, no.
Us and another entertainment group. And now they had the contract. Now what happened was we're sitting there, but here's the thing. We got there like 2 hours early. We set up. We had lighting. We had a sound system. The actors were looking great. Their costumes. We had a full set with a video projection. And, again, we were like $200 more. The other people showed up, and they had nothing.
Wow.
They just looked very unprofessional. But the other guy was like walking around saying, I have a contract. And at the time, I was like, I didn't have it on me. So I was like, oh, boy, I must have really screwed up. But then the lady said, wait a minute. Where's Ryan? He's the guy that I spoke to, the sales guy that I spoke to over and over again. He's the one that and I said, that's me.
Oh.
That's me. And what she had done is because I had spoken to her so often and we had developed such a great rapport, she had written my company's name and number on the contract of our competitor. So every
did
time
that
she
guy
was
have the contract with him? And you look at it and it
but
had
she
your name?
eventually decided to get them out. So she gave them a little bit of something, but we winded up staying and getting paid for the gig merely on the power of the relationship that I created and the fact that we looked so professional compared to them. So that I love that story because it just shows you the power of having a great relationship with a client, even if you're priced out of their range.
That is,
and then they went to book us again after that. So
that is huge, excellent story, lesson, example, and confirmation that we need to just continue not living behind email, but actually being responsive in person, whether it's even in person on the phone. And then the other thing would be, what if all that happened and you guys were the ones that had nothing and the other people had looked really, set up and all that? It might have gone a different way potentially. So it has to be that full package. You have to look good on paper, in person, have the follow-up, have your online presence, and then the experience that they had with you, with well set up, well costumed, well prepared, just closes that loop.
Yeah, I mean, it just that's the thing is that she had a bond with us and really didn't have a bond with them, but booked them basically on price alone. And she was able to find through all that boy, oh boy, really, I made the wrong decision. I should have went with these guys in the first place.
Wow. Hey, so let's tell our listeners how they can learn more about you. What's the best way that they can learn more and reach you?
Sure, certainly. Well, we're the Riddlesbrood Touring Theater Company. The first place is to take a look at us online at www.riddlesbrood.com. You can also take a look at our Facebook. We have a lot of pictures of our shows and different things we're doing on there. Also, if you type in the name Riddlesbrood, Riddlesbrood, in Amazon, you can even get a copy of our greatest brochure in the world, which is a fantastically cool fantasy story about theater and the way the theater grew from being nothing to a big deal. So if you like fantasy stories and cool stories, I would definitely encourage people to take a look at that.
Super. Well, thank you so much for your time. It was great getting to know you today.
Thank you. You too, sir. Thanks. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.